The town was small, with old brick buildings and quiet streets. The trees had lost most of their leaves, and the cold wind pushed them along the sidewalks like forgotten memories. James stood at the edge of Main Street, a heavy duffel bag slung over each shoulder. His boots were worn, his jacket a little too thin for the sharp chill in the air. His face, framed by a rough beard and tired eyes, told a story without words, a story of long battles, not just on faraway lands, but inside himself. For a few minutes, James just stood there, breathing in the cold air, trying to push away the worry growing inside him. He had been through worse, much worse, he reminded himself. Still, finding a place to live after months of sleeping in shelters and cheap motels felt heavier than he thought it would. He shifted his bags and walked toward a little grocery store. The sign in the window flickered with an old open light. Inside it smelled like coffee and old wood. James walked to the community board near the entrance, eyes scanning the rows of paper ads and handwritten notes. There it was, a small white card, pinned between a piano lesson flyer and a dog walking service. Room for rent, $400/month. Quiet area, no pets, call Parker. James stared at it for a moment, heart thumping with cautious hope. 400 was doable. Barely, but doable. He pulled out his phone, an old flip phone that still worked, and dialed the number listed. The ring buzzed in his ear, and for a second he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally about to get better. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. Yeah? The voice barked. James cleared his throat. Hi sir, I'm calling about the room for rent. I saw the ad at Market Street. There was a pause before the man responded, annoyed. You got a job? I don't rent to freeloaders. James kept his voice steady. Yes sir, I work at the warehouse. Another pause, followed by a short laugh. All right, come by if you want, but I'm not holding anything. James quickly jotted down the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Thanks. As the call ended, a small hope stirred inside him. Maybe this time, it wouldn't be another dead end. He stepped outside, the wind biting, but the town felt different, less cold. His heart picked up a little, thinking this could be his chance. When James arrived at the house, it was old but decent. Mr. Parker was waiting on the porch, cigarette dangling from his mouth. He eyed James up and down, sneering. You the one who called? He asked. Yes sir. James Carter. James replied. Parker scoffed, sizing him up. You don't look like you can lift a thing. James swallowed his pride. I served 12 years in the army. I'm used to hard work. Parker let out a loud laugh. Another soldier thinking the world owes him something. James stood tall, refusing to show the sting. All he wanted was a chance, not pity. Parker stepped closer, his tone mocking. You think I'll let a worn-out vet stay here? He laughed again, loud enough for anyone to hear. James picked up his bags, keeping his dignity intact. I'll find another place. Parker shrugged, calling after him. Good luck, hero. James walked away, each step heavier than the last. He had fought for his country, only to be laughed at. But what he didn't know was that someone had been watching. Claire, standing across the street, had seen it all. Her heart twisted at the sight of James walking away, humiliated. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and crossed the street, following him quietly. James stopped at a bench near the diner, setting down his bags with a tired sigh. He sat down, rubbing his hands together for warmth, his shoulders sagging as if all the fight had drained out of him. Claire took a deep breath, and approached slowly. She didn't want to scare him, or make things worse. Standing a few feet away, she spoke gently. Hi. Excuse me, she said, her voice soft. I saw what happened back there. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. James looked up, startled at first. But when he saw her kind eyes, his guard dropped just a little. Can I buy you a coffee? Claire offered, pointing to the small diner behind them. It's warm inside. And maybe it'll make this day a little less awful. James hesitated for a moment. Pride wrestled with exhaustion inside him. Finally, he gave a small nod. Thank you, he said quietly. They walked toward the diner together, two strangers brought together by a moment of cruelty, and something neither of them could explain just yet. The diner smelled like fresh coffee and warm pie. It wasn't fancy, just chipped tables, squeaky booths, and a friendly waitress who greeted them with a tired smile. Claire and James picked a booth near the window, away from the few other customers. James sat stiffly at first, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup the waitress placed in front of him. Claire could see how uncomfortable he was, like he wasn't used to kindness anymore. They sat in silence for a moment, the warmth from the coffee slowly chasing away the coldness from outside. Finally, Claire spoke. "I'm Claire, by the way. I work over at the community center. We do things like job training, housing help, stuff like that." James nodded, grateful for the way she spoke, calm without pity. "James Carter," he said. "Warehouse worker, Army veteran." Claire smiled gently. "I figured the way Parker treated you had nothing to do with you. That man's been nasty for as long as I can remember." James gave a small tired chuckle. "I guess I should have known. Just, gets old, you know. Fighting for a place in the world." Claire's heart tightened at his words. It wasn't just about today, it was about all the invisible battles he fought every day, the ones nobody clapped for. "You deserve better," Claire said simply. James looked down at his coffee, his fingers tightening around the cup. "I'm not looking for handouts," he said quietly. "I know," Claire answered. "You're looking for a chance, and that's different." James finally met her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, he saw something he thought he'd lost: respect. Not sympathy, not fake smiles. Real, genuine respect. They talked for a while longer. James told her about the towns he'd seen during his service, the good and bad parts, the brothers he lost along the way. Claire listened, never interrupting, just letting him speak, and somewhere between stories and sips of coffee, the weight on James's chest started to feel just a little lighter. Outside, the sky darkened, and a soft snow began to fall, covering the ugly parts of the town in a clean, quiet white. Maybe, James thought, not everything was broken after all. Maybe some things could still be mended. After a while, the diner grew quieter, the few customers trickling out into the snowy night. James glanced at the clock on the wall and shifted in his seat, feeling the weight of his duffel bags beside him again. He didn't want to overstay his welcome. "I should probably get going," he said, his voice low. "Find a place before it gets too late." Claire hesitated for a second, then took a deep breath. "I might have a solution," she said carefully. "If you're willing to hear me out." James looked at her, curious but guarded. Claire smiled, a little nervously. "My grandmother left me a house on Willow Lane. I've been fixing it up little by little, but it's too big for just me. There's an extra room. Private bathroom. Nothing fancy, but it's warm, and it's yours if you want it." James blinked, unsure if he had heard her right. "I can't afford anything big," he said quickly. "And I don't want charity." Claire shook her head. "It's not charity. Pay whatever you can for now. When you're back on your feet, we'll figure out something more formal. I don't want that jerk Parker to be the reason you give up." James sat back, stunned. He had expected another long freezing night, another reminder that no matter how hard he tried, the world had no place for him. But here she was, not offering pity, offering trust. Still, old instincts made him hesitate. "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Claire's smile softened. "Because someone once helped me when I was at my lowest," she said. "And because you deserve a chance to get back up without people kicking you down." For a long moment, James said nothing. He stared out the window at the falling snow, the town wrapped in white like a clean slate. Finally he nodded. "Okay," he said, voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite hide. "Thank you, Claire." Claire reached across the table and gave his hand a quick squeeze, warm and steady. "You're not alone anymore, James," she said. "And you're not broken, you're just getting started." Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside that little diner, something new had begun, something stronger than all the cold in the world. While James and Claire finished their coffee, something else was happening just a few blocks away. At Parker's old worn-down house, flashing blue and red lights lit up the cracked driveway. 2 police cruisers sat parked outside, engines idling in the cold. Earlier that day, while Parker had been busy mocking James, a city inspector happened to drive by. Someone had filed a complaint about the property, anonymous, but detailed. Peeling paint, unstable porch steps, illegal room rentals without permits, the list was long. Parker stood on his porch now, red-faced and shouting at the officers. "This is harassment. I've lived here 30 years. He barked. One of the officers, a tall woman with a calm but firm voice, held up a clipboard. "And you've been violating housing codes for about 10 of those years. We're shutting down your illegal rentals immediately." The inspector beside her shook his head. "Unsafe conditions. No smoke detectors. Mold in the basement. You're lucky we don't fine you into the ground." Neighbors peeked through curtains across the street, whispering to each other. Many had their own stories about Parker, the rude comments, the threats, the way he treated people like garbage. None of them felt sorry now. Parker's voice cracked, as he realized what was happening. Wait, he cried. "I need those rooms rented. I can't afford." "Not our problem, sir," the officer said coldly. "You'll need to fix everything before you rent again. That's if you're allowed to." They handed him a thick packet of violations, and a court summons. By the time the officers left, Parker was alone on his porch, snow falling around him, his future crumbling like the old wood under his feet. Meanwhile, just a few streets over, James and Claire stepped out of the diner, walking into the snowy night with a new kind of hope. James didn't know about Parker's downfall yet. He didn't need to. Life had a way of taking care of things when the time was right. And sometimes, karma didn't just come quietly, it came fast, cold and unmistakably clear. The next morning, the snow had stopped, leaving the streets coated in a soft sparkling blanket of white. James stood in front of Claire's house on Willow Lane, his duffel bags at his feet, staring up at the place he would now call home. It wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful in its own way. The small porch had a swing that creaked gently in the breeze. The front windows were lit warmly from the inside, and a wreath hung crookedly on the door, as if inviting him in with a smile. Claire opened the door, her face bright with a grin. "Come on in," she said. "I made coffee." James hesitated on the steps, feeling a lump rise in his throat. For so long, he had carried everything he owned on his back. For so long, nowhere had felt safe. And now, someone had opened a door for him. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and fresh paint. The floors were polished wood, and the walls were a soft, welcoming yellow. Claire led him down a short hallway to a cozy bedroom, with a neatly made bed, a small desk, and a window that looked out onto the backyard. "There's a heater in here," she said, turning it up. "Extra blankets in the closet. Take your time getting settled." James set his bags down slowly, feeling the unfamiliar weight of gratitude settle in his chest. He turned to Claire, trying to find the right words, but they didn't come easily. Instead, he simply said, "Thank you." Claire smiled and patted his arm lightly. "You've earned a little peace, James," she said. "And you're welcome to stay as long as you need." As she left him to unpack, James sat on the edge of the bed, letting the quiet wrap around him. No shouting landlords, no fear of the next night, no one looking at him like he didn't belong. For the first time in what felt like forever, James closed his eyes and let out a deep, steady breath. He had a roof over his head, he had dignity. And maybe, just maybe, he had a future worth fighting for again. Outside the window, the snow sparkled under the morning sun, and somewhere deep inside him, a small stubborn hope began to bloom. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, James started to rebuild the pieces of his life. With Claire's encouragement, he applied for jobs around town. Not the low-paying dead-end ones he had resigned himself to, but real opportunities where his skills mattered. He got a job at a shipping company, managing logistics. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, honest work. Each morning, he laced up his boots with a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. At night, after long shifts, he would sit on the porch with Claire, 2 steaming mugs of tea between them. Sometimes they talked about little things, the weather, old music, funny memories. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars blink to life above the snowy rooftops. Bit by bit, the heavy loneliness James had carried began to lift. Claire, too, seemed to change. She laughed more, her eyes sparkling in a way James hadn't noticed before. She shared stories of her own hardships, the loss of her parents when she was young, the nights she spent wondering if she'd ever feel whole again. They didn't need to say it out loud, but both of them felt it, a quiet, growing bond, built not on grand gestures, but on trust, respect, and the simple kindness of being seen. One evening, after a long day, James came home to find the living room filled with the smell of something delicious. Claire peeked out from the kitchen, her hair tied up messily, her cheeks pink from the stove's heat. "I hope you're hungry," she said. "I tried making that casserole you mentioned." James chuckled, feeling warmth bloom in his chest. As they sat down to eat, laughter and conversation filling the space between them, James realized something. This wasn't just a roof over his head anymore, this was home. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, and in Claire's company, in her laughter and kindness, he found something he never thought he'd have again. Family, belonging, hope. Maybe life had broken him once, but now, with a little help, he was learning that broken things could still be made whole. Sometimes even stronger than before. It was a crisp evening when James returned home, a fresh sense of purpose filling him. He had just received the news that he was getting promoted at work. The company recognized his dedication, and it felt like everything he had worked for, every step, every sacrifice, was finally paying off. As he walked up the path to the house, Claire was waiting on the porch. Her smile, wide and genuine, greeted him before she even said a word. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice light with curiosity. James' smile was the answer before his words even came out. "They promoted me," he said, his eyes shining. "I'm moving to a new position, more responsibility, more pay." Claire's eyes sparkled with pride. She stepped forward, and gave him a warm hug, her arms wrapping around him in that familiar comforting way. It wasn't just happiness, it was pride, love, and the undeniable feeling that they had been through something together. "I knew you could do it," she whispered into his ear, pulling back to look at him. "You've always had it in you." The warmth between them, the connection, was undeniable. James felt his heart swell as he looked at Claire. He realized, with clarity, that this was home. Not the house, not the job, but the people you find along the way. Later that evening, as they sat on the couch, Claire leaned her head on James's shoulder. She was quiet, as if waiting for him to speak. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Claire," he began, his voice serious but filled with a tenderness he hadn't expected. "You've given me more than just a place to stay, you've given me a chance to live again." She looked up at him, her eyes soft. "You didn't need to say that, James. You've done it all on your own. I'm just glad to be here with you." He smiled at her, and reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "You're more than just here, Claire," he said softly. "You're home." Claire's smile widened, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Then we're both home," she whispered. And in that moment, everything came full circle. The journey that had started in the harsh cold of a cruel landlord's laughter had led them here, to something beautiful and real. It was a new chapter, a fresh start, for both of them. James wasn't just rebuilding his life, he was creating something new, with someone who had shown him that even the hardest roads could lead to a place worth fighting for. And as the stars twinkled outside, the promise of tomorrow felt brighter than ever. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey, from the cold streets to the warmth of new beginnings. James's story is a reminder that no matter how hard life may seem, there's always hope for a fresh start. His journey of redemption, kindness, and unexpected bonds shows us that the right people can help us heal and rebuild even when we think all is lost. If you were touched by James's story and the power of second chances, don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more heartfelt stories that remind us all that hope is never truly lost. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.